All right, now that we've taken a look at the Move brush, let's go ahead and talk about Dynamesh real quick here. Dynamesh is the new system inside of ZBrush that's going to give you volumetric type of sculpting to where you just worry about the shape and you don't really worry about the topology. But there are some things that you need to know about how Dynamesh works in order to get the best results out of it. So right now you can see the model and you can kind of see some of these polygons on it and stuff like that, which is great for the lower levels, no big deal. If we turn on the polyframe, you can click this here and you can see the hotkey for that is Shift F, so we can toggle this on and off. This is going to give you an idea of what the geometry actually looks like for Dynamesh. If we want to take a look at controlling Dynamesh a little more, you can go under the Geometry tab under Tools. So open up Tools, go to Geometry, and then right down here there's a big button for Dynamesh that should be on. So currently it has a resolution of 64. That's just going to say that this is kind of a slider that you can drag all the way down or all the way up, and that's going to obviously give you more or less polygons. So let's drag this up to something like 256. The numbers aren't actually important, you just have to drag this along the slider. I just like to keep it with numbers that I'm used to, like 256, 128, 512, you know, stuff that kind of correlates to maps. There's no reason or rhyme for that, just I kind of like to do that. So the way that you get Dynamesh to kind of regenerate topology is you hold down Control and you drag a marquee in the open viewport, and as soon as you let go, it's going to remesh. And you can see here, since we bumped up the resolution on this guy, it's going to remesh, and it's obviously going to have a lot more geometry. So we probably don't even need that much geometry at this stage, so we can pull that down to 128 and hold down Control and drag a marquee in the open viewport. Now I have noticed that Dynamesh doesn't remesh sometimes. If there's no change in the model, it doesn't do anything, so you can just click and drag on the model slightly and then Control, drag the marquee in the open viewport, and that's going to remesh for you. So you can see this is going to be nice for us to just kind of start off with and work with right now at this point. Another thing I wanted you to be aware of is this blur slider right here. So it's by default it's set to 2, which kind of tells it when it remeshes this thing to go ahead and kind of put a smooth algorithm on it. I'm not a big fan of that because it kind of washes out some of your details whenever you get to a higher subdivision or more resolution in this thing. So I like to drag that down to 0 and just leave that where it's at. So whenever you do the Dynamesh and remesh, whenever I have that down to 0, it's going to give me closer results to exactly what I'm looking at on the screen here. And you can see that it happens so quickly, you're not even going to really notice it. As your model gets larger with more detail, you're going to start to notice this remeshing process. It might take just a little bit of time for it to remesh. And also the size of your model determines resolution. So if I drag this thing out really far and then I remesh, it's going to have an effect on the overall resolution, the overall volume that we're making here. So I'm just going to hit undo to get that back. I just want you to know that that's something to be aware of. You might have a lot of detail on your model, and then all of a sudden let's say you drag out these shapes that extend really far out into the canvas, and then you remesh, and then you notice that detail that you had down here starts to drop off. That's because you've changed the overall volume of the model and you've extended it to make a much larger block. Just think of the volumes as if you're building with Lego blocks. Obviously, the larger your model is, the more Lego blocks it's going to take to build that thing with. And this resolution slider, it caps out. You've only got 1024 that's like your bucket of Lego bricks that you're going to be able to work with at that point. So I'm going to put that back down to 128 and just make sure it remeshes. The last thing we want to talk about is this group button. If you have group turned on, and a little bit later we're going to take a look at a brush that's called the mesh insert brush, which will basically allow you to take another model and just click and drag and draw it out on here. Let's say you wanted to add a shape like a sphere or something like that on this model. You can go ahead and click and drag that out, and it's going to hold the groups on there, so it keeps this shape separate from the new shape that you go on there. So we're not really going to look at the insert brushes yet, but just to show you this feature, I'm going to click and drag this out real quick so you can see this. So if I take this and remesh, you can see that it's going to remesh the model, but it's going to keep this separate from this. Now take a look if I turn this group off. See how it's combined the two models together, and then you can start smoothing this out and you've got a new shape. That's what that group button does. So you're going to have to determine, do you want to keep your shape separate, or do you want it to be combined as a one-piece model? And there's benefits to both. It's going to give you a different look for each method that you use. But these are the different options for Dynamesh. Once you get moving on this, you're not really going to be thinking about this stuff too much at all. But I wanted to show you some of the options for that and get you to start thinking about just the resolution of your model. Just my approach is to start off really blocky and without a lot of polygons and get the rough shape going. And once that shape has been pushed so far that you can tell that I just don't have enough polygons, it's looking like I need more geometry to get the detail that I'm looking for. At that point, when you get to that point, move this slider up and remesh and start working from there. Always work from low to high. You don't want to add too much detail right off the bat, because it just makes it more difficult to change your shapes and explore different ideas and concepts right off the bat. So that would be my advice for you on that.